It's time to talk about that word that starts with an S. Some people like it, some people don't. We call it snow. The time is 7:26 p.m. and it is November 15th, I think. Welcome to another Great Lakes weather. Hopefully everybody's doing well today. Doing another video, rolling it out because we are now talking about winter weather, making that shift. It's about time. I mean, we've kind of had a late warm season, I guess you could say. It's been relatively warm and dry fall, particularly in October. And we're still dealing with some warmer than average temperatures. We have temperatures in the 50s and some might even approach 60 next week. But by the time we get to middle of next week, we're looking at the potential for a mid-latitude cyclone that could impact our weather and bring us back into a cooler pattern that would be more typical for this time of year. So we're going to dive right in. This right here is from the CPC. This is the latest from the CPC, as a matter of fact. And this is their projection or their hazards outlook between November 23rd and November 29th. They do an 8 to 14 day outlook based on some of the trends that they're seeing. And as you can tell, there is going to be some activity happening all across the Great Lakes. Now, the question is where and when this activity will occur. Still a little bit of question there. And how intense it'll be most definitely is still in question. But there is a system that's going to be making its way into the Great Lakes region next week. Potential for high winds in particular across portions of pretty much the entire Great Lakes, northern Indiana, northern Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, northeastern Illinois. And you notice here that pink, okay, something we haven't seen in a while, potential for heavy snow. Now, I know areas such as Buffalo, areas in New York are pretty used to lake effect snow events, and active lake effect snow events for that matter. But it looks like that's going to potentially occur come next week. So that's why that area is shaded in pink across portions of the eastern Great Lakes, and then you have that area in West Virginia, and then heading towards Virginia as we start to see that mid-latitude cyclone approach. Here's a little bit of a breakdown. More specifically, for the risk for heavy snow, you can still see that most of the Great Lakes region is under a slight risk. There's still some questions at play as to how much snow will occur, but I do think our first shot at snow, particularly across Michigan, northern Indiana, and portions of Ohio, is on the table, and there even is a chance that it could reach down to southern Indiana, southern Ohio. Not going to say that just yet. We're going to take a look at some weather models in this video, and again, raw weather data will change, so don't take this at face value 100% as for sure. But we are seeing some trends that could pertain to the potential for first snow of the season for quite a bit of us in the Great Lakes. So get hyped for that, as am I. So that is what is being shown from the CPC, and actually it's kind of starting to, they're also starting to forecast the potential for a I would say a wetter winter, not in terms of the amount of precipitation that we'll see. We will likely see more precipitation than average. And you do notice that the seasonal temperature outlook from the CPC projects below average temperatures across the northwestern United States and an equal chance across the western Great Lakes, with leaning more above average across the eastern Great Lakes. Why is that the case? Well, if you watched my previous video, I think we hinted a little bit about the fact of La Nina making its approach. So La Nina is just a cooler surface level temperature in the Pacific Ocean, and what that does is that allows for a cooler trend to occur across the global climate and enables the polar jet stream to dip a little bit further to the south. And when it does that, that's when we start to see that cooler air surge in from areas such as the Arctic, okay, which is why they're projecting that colder air across portions of the northwestern continental United States. Now, areas such in the south and in the east, that's actually more typical to see above average conditions, and this is also usually typical of a La Nina pattern to see above average precipitation across the Great Lakes region and northwest, and then below average precipitation further to the south. When we enter La Nina season, it sort of again sends that polar jet stream a little bit further to the south and alters the climate across the United States, pretty much across the globe. So that's kind of something that's being projected by the CPC based on their based on the guidance that they have received. So let's take a look at the models and dive into some of the things that are being said with regards to this system. You've probably seen it floating across much of social media. There's the potential for a snowstorm, which I'm not gonna lie, there is. Are we sure of that though yet? Absolutely not. So don't be for certain about anything in this case. Okay, it could wind up just being rain, quite a bit of us. Or it could be that case where we start to see quite a bit of snow. It's still dependent a lot on the fact of how cold it can get, okay, and how much cool air will surge in from portions of the western Great Lakes. So let's take a look at this model output. This is the GFS. I think this is the latest GFS model, 18Z, November 15th. So we're going to kind of just go through this again. We've got high pressure kind of dominating us right now, but at the same time, we are dealing with those annoying sprinkles. Some of you might have enjoyed it for hunting, opening day of hunting season today. I know the deer like that kind of weather, but still. Progressing forward, you can see not really too much going to be going on through the weekend until we start to see the potential for some rain maybe Sunday evening into Monday. And then you see this system right here. This is not the system that's going to be associated with the winter weather, but you can see we got kind of a strengthening mid-latitude cyclone that kind of takes shape across portions of the plains. That could lead to maybe even some severe weather out there. We'll have to see how that evolves. Again, the global models probably aren't going to handle it as well as the closer range models do. But you can see that that low pressure system is going to make its way towards the Great Lakes region and bring a good batch of rain. And that batch of rain will probably stick around portions of the northern Great Lakes region for quite a while. And then here's where that next system makes its way. You can kind of see it sort of surges and brings that colder air surging out behind it again when you have that counterclockwise motion of wind associated with the low pressure system. That usually brings the warmer air from the southeast and further north, and the colder air from the northwest further south. What's going to happen here is the low pressure system might go through an occlusion process, and what happens at that particular case is that the cold air can typically get underneath that low pressure system and progress further south, and the warmer air could even progress further to the north. It might go through a little bit of a strengthening process in that situation. That's why the winds will likely tighten up. We'll start to see some stronger winds from this. Not really sure about the strength of those winds just yet. I don't think they're going to get too strong. But they'll be enough to trigger the potential for maybe even some lake effect snow as we get into next weekend. So I'm going to argue probably between the 22nd and the 25th. We'll see that activity. But you notice here, as that cold air makes its way ahead of this mid-latitude cyclone that is currently shifting further to the east than the latest models. Again, it might shift further back west. The Euro actually points out that it might shift further back to the west, so we'll have to keep that in mind. But you can see that there's a little batch of blue sitting right in this area, and you all know what that means. That means snow. Not really the... some people may love to hear that, and other people will be like, absolutely not. Get that out of my face. But I, for one, am very excited. And it really shows that it will start to really take off across portions of, as a matter of fact, southern Indiana, southern Ohio, based on the global models. Now, not for certain yet, but the models are kind of having that output where on the southern fringe of this low and on the southwestern fringe, you're going to have that snow that might begin to develop. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that. And you can see that in some places across southern Indiana, southern Ohio, it might actually get a little bit heavy along that southern edge of the low pressure system. You can see that that low pressure system is deepening. You're getting that tightening of isobars surrounding that low pressure system, stronger winds as it begins to, and it will begin to occlude. You can notice that cold air is wrapping all the way around it, and it's still drawing in that moisture from the Atlantic Ocean as it makes its way through. So a strengthening mid-latitude cyclone is what usually contributes to those stronger winds. Had this happened in a cooler climate, would not be surprised if this would have been something more interesting along the lines of a stronger winter storm. But it already still is showing a pretty strong mid-latitude cyclone just early enough in the season where it's not going to be as impactful unless you're on that southern fringe. We're going to want to keep a close eye on that and how much cold air actually follows along behind that. And we'll have to see how things evolve. But you can see a lot of this for a lot of people is going to mainly just be a rainmaker, and probably going to be the case, especially if you sit on the eastern side of it. Going to be mainly a rainmaker for this system as it moves through. But you can see that snow will begin to wrap around, but then the dry air will sort of overtake the low pressure system and start to kind of allow it to weaken as it progresses further northeast. That regardless, though, you're still going to have that wind associated with it on the backside. As that pressure begins to rise, you still see that there's a lot of lake effect rain and lake effect snow showers occurring. You notice that in Michigan, it's mainly green. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see some accumulating snow from this. Not too much. I don't think it's going to be a huge snowmaker for Michigan. It depends on where that low resides. We're going to have to watch. I know some models have been putting out kind of the higher level snow totals. One we put out, what was the long range, which is again why we said let's not take this at face value. At this point, we're still kind of in question as to how much snow we'll see. But you can see that lake effect really takes over as this thing begins to weaken over the Great Lakes region. And we'll have to see how that will contribute to the overall rain and snowfall accumulations. But I definitely think we'll see some accumulating snow. It's very possible. So we'll just have to keep our eyes peeled. And I still might honestly chase it, even if it is a low end, because it's the first snow of the season. You got to be out there, right? You got to go out there and catch the first flakes. That's how it works. But you can see that we get back into a warming trend on the back side of that. So any snow that falls will likely melt within the next few days. We get kind of that return to a warmer air mass. So we'll have to see as we go further out what's going to occur as we approach December. But again, it's the first notable low pressure system that could contribute to some snow. So we're gonna cover it, and we're gonna keep an eye on it. But let's take a look at how the Euro is playing this thing out. It's a little bit different. So it actually plays out further north and further west, which again, still in question as to where this thing's going to go. You can see that first initial wave makes its way a little bit further to the north and east, maybe brings a few thunderstorms to portions of Indiana. This will be interesting to watch if this actually does tend to verify, because it looks like you got some thunderstorms on the side of portion of Indiana. Temperatures will be around 60 degrees. Timing would not really be appropriate for it in terms of any active severe weather, and I doubt there will be that kind of potential present. I do think if there's any severe weather potential, it'll be further to the south. But regardless, something to just take note of. As we go forward, you can see that you got that resurgence of cooler air. You got that new low that kind of makes its appearance. And interestingly enough, it makes its appearance further to the north. And it kind of brings more snow further to the north as well, based on what its guidance suggests. And that snow potential will make its way into northern Indiana, extreme southern Michigan, northwest Ohio. So really, the both global models are hitting at system snow for portions of Indiana and Ohio, and then lake effect snow on the backside for much of the Great Lakes region, or lake effect rain. Heavily dependent upon if our temperatures can get low enough to support the development of snow. Because if you take a look at a sounding, again, this sounding I wouldn't trust fully, but one thing to keep in mind is that the different levels of the atmosphere, you have different temperatures. If you go further up in the atmosphere, you're likely to have warmer temperatures, and as you go further down to the surface, temperatures are oftentimes going to warm up. Notice how this sounding puts an output of about 33 degrees with a dew point of 31. That is about the max saturation you could get for the potential for heavier snow, which again, will that heavy snow bring a lot of snow accumulation? It's still heavily in question and doubtful. I think we might see a little bit of a warming trend occur, but again, the models have been kind of consistently hinting at there's going to be snow with this, so we're just going to keep an eye on it, and if it tends to trend toward a more intense and cooler situation, we'll probably send out another video. But I just want to make you guys aware of this model output, and we'll see what the impacts of this could be. I think probably it's not going to be too much, because models tend to get pretty excited at points, but then they start to downtrend as they get to the event. So just things to watch and keep in mind. Make sure to subscribe and stay updated. There's a good chance I may go out to the lakeshore next week, especially if there's high wave action. Always love to get out in the high waves when it's snowing. I've done that. I did that several times last year with several people. It was a blast. So it's always worth doing. But we'll keep you updated. Make sure to check out us on Facebook, YouTube, also on Twitter. You can find me there, and I'll try to keep you updated. Thanks for watching, all. See you later.